Tina, so nice to see you again today. What would you like to talk about?
About setting boundaries and managing my time at Summer Institute.
Okay. Tell me about setting boundaries.
Well, the specific situation that had me think of the topic was Friday. After class, I met a friend from Summer Institute, and I felt a little bit like I actually just wanted to go home, but then I ended up spending time with her, and at one point I realized, somehow I guess it was with me all the time, that I would have probably been happier just to go home. But somehow I felt like we needed to spend time, and just, yeah, that balance of spending time with people and on the other hand actually listening to what I really want to do. Yeah.
Tell me what it was like for you then, Tina, to be in that situation where partway through you thought it would be better if you had gone home, but concerned about spending time with your friend. Tell me what that was like for you.
It was really uncomfortable because I felt like I wasn't fully there. I wasn't fully with her. Something about that I wasn't wholehearted in that. Because part of me just actually wanted to go home. So I've made some good choices around that at Summer Institute, but at the same time I feel like I need to keep reminding myself to make good choices, basically.
Tell me about the times when you have made good choices.
There was one time when I arrived here, and after a couple of days my roommate and I spent quite a bit of time, and then I was aware that I didn't want to fall into a habitual way of that's what we do, we spend time. So then at one point I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna go for a walk by myself or something like that, which broke up that dynamic of that's what we do, which was really good because I felt really free in that, and then we came back together, or we just talked in the evening or something, and it just seemed really good and rich to connect like that.
How did your friend respond to that when you said you needed to go for a walk alone?
I think maybe she was a little surprised, but also sensitive to it. And then it was actually nice because I could see her doing some things on her own in the next couple of days. So my assumption is that it was good for her. And it was very open once we did connect again later. So it was good for the relationship to do that.
What did you take away from that then, Tina, that experience of setting that boundary and having your friend perhaps be a little bit awkward about it, but a good outcome in the end? What did you take away from that?
I think that it's really important for me to do that, to set boundaries and to really listen to what I actually want to do. That's more important than I think, because I can easily override that. So yeah, just the importance of staying with that, even if it takes a lot. It seems to take a lot to do that, but it's important.
So if I were to ask you to rate that level of effort that it took to make that decision to say you wanted to go for the walk, and 0 was no effort, it was super easy, and 10 was it's the most effortful thing I've ever done, where would you put that action that you took?
I think it would be a 5.5.
Okay. And if you were then to rank where you would prefer that to be as time goes on and you become more comfortable with setting boundaries, 0 being easy, 10 being very difficult, where would you like to drive towards?
don't really know.
Okay.
Because the effort also keeps me on my toes. So there's something good in it too.
Okay.
But it would still be nice if it was natural at one point as well.
Tell me about keeping on your toes.
I think it just has me not being too comfortable, which I think is a good thing.
How is that a good thing, Tina?
I guess I'm more happy when I know I'm moving forward and I keep a bit closer to my cutting edge. Yeah, that just seems good somehow.
Okay, so I'd love to ask about how this might be different, the way that you set that boundary, the benefit that you saw out of it, compared to a time when you had done that in the past. So I guess what I'm looking for is what was different about this time?
I think, sorry, I'm answering the question.
Tina, maybe I could help out a little bit here. Why don't we begin by me asking, tell me about a time when you set a boundary or tried to set a boundary in the past, and what was that like for you? This seemed like such a positive experience this time, but tell me about when you've worked through that in the past.
I guess in my life, usually I'm not as aware of setting boundaries. I just sometimes become aware of that I don't set them, that I'm too accommodating. So this was just a very distinct opportunity. So somehow I have a little bit of difficulty recalling a clear boundary. I would need to think about that a bit more.
Okay. Would it be fair to say then that this experience was different in that there was a clear boundary?
Okay.
I
think so.
Tina, what would you like then going forward from this point in the area of boundary setting?
That I keep really checking in and I guess taking a risk of verbalizing what I want to do and really listening to that, and I guess not ever hesitating to say what I actually want to do. I guess I have a little belief that, maybe it's about what other people want to do, but I can see that that doesn't work.
In the past, when you have needed to set a boundary and haven't, what belief is driving that? Might be driving that, you use the word risk, risk of setting a boundary.
You mean what belief has me not setting a boundary?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to say that again, just for the...
I can.
Yeah.
So, Tina, in the past, you've had struggles to set boundaries. This time you had a clear boundary. Was there a belief, or what belief might have been driving that challenge to setting a boundary?
I think that it doesn't matter so much what I want. What I want is not important. And therefore I can fulfill what other people want. That I think that it's, how do you say, like good or gracious or, I forget the English word, but like a good, benevolent characteristic to not listen to what I want.
So you believe that not setting boundaries is a benevolent, good thing to do because it means that you are caring for others, respecting others, taking care of others' needs. When you
Yeah.
say that out loud and I reflect that back to you,
Mhm.
what comes to mind?
Well, that it's actually not true. Yeah. That I can say what I want to do, then I take responsibility for all of me, and other people can say what they want to do, and then either it comes together or not. And that it's not really fair to meet somebody if I don't really want to. That I'm not giving all of me, basically, to them. So something about it's not the best for them either.
And what value about yourself and the way you like to live comes out in that statement? It's not the best for them either. It's not the best for you. Is there a value, or what value might that characterize?
I think something about listening, to really listen in what I want to do, and then to verbalize that. And it's more difficult for me to stay with that than to just do what somebody else wants me to do. So to really listen to that and verbalize that or express that. Taking responsibility, I guess.
Does that resonate? Taking responsibility for yourself, the way your needs, the way you need to go forward on that. Does that resonate? Taking responsibility? It sounded too like there was a responsibility for other people as well, a healthy responsibility. What does that look like?
I think if I take care of what's mine, then I can take care of others. But without compromising what's mine. So from there I can give, and then it's more aligned, maybe.
I wonder if it's valuable for me to recap what we've talked about at this point, Tina. Would that be okay to you? So we started with a discussion about you had set a very clear boundary with your roommate, respectfully identifying that you wanted to go out for a walk. It took risk to do that. You tested it, and although it might have not landed perfectly well for her at the time, you saw that it had benefit down the line. It set some healthy, clear relationship patterns and boundaries, and it was a very positive experience. And that was one of the first times in recent times, at least, that you'd set a clear boundary and had really sort of listened to yourself, what you needed. And then from that, you realized that when you're in that situation of not setting a boundary, you actually aren't wholehearted. You can't give wholeheartedly, and that's not the value or the place that you want to live in your relationships. And then we started talking about sort of that it morphed into an idea of responsibility, that when I am am responsible for my own well-being, then I can then better give to others, and it's a better relationship all around. How does that sit with you?
That's all correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tina, where would you want to go from here then forward?
I think making really conscious choices every day about what I'm going to do on that specific day, and really valuing the time I have, not spending it lightly.
Sometimes, Tina, it can be valuable to, when you want to move forward on something that a practice or a habit or a way of being you want to be every day, sometimes it can be helpful to have, to create a goal. Are you used to goal setting? Have you set goals in the past?
Probably, but not in a very concrete way, I guess.
Okay. Would it be all right with you if I shared with you a strategy for setting goals that might be helpful? Okay. Have you ever heard of a strategy called the SMART goals, SMART goal setting?
Not in the last days, no.
Okay. SMART stands for 5 things. Each letter stands for a characteristic of a goal that is the kind that will help you to sort of take it from paper to action, to real life. So S is specific. We'll work through each of these. M is measurable. A is achievable. R is something that's relevant and time-oriented. So when you create a goal that is so specific that it tells you exactly what you're aiming for in a timed manner, it can just help you to measure and go forward to say, yes, I did that, or I didn't do that, or what was hard about doing that. Does that sound like something you'd want to do? So you've talked about making concrete choices every day about how the way you spend your time, having some intentionality. If you were to create a goal around that, what comes to mind?
The first thing is that there's a few things I want to do every day, and to follow through with these.
Okay. What would those things be? Can you share those?
So that's cooking healthy food,
Okay.
doing my exercises, and then listening to like a certain philosophy podcast. That's good.
And are these, so we've been talking about barriers or boundaries, up to this point, and these pieces are part of that boundary conversation?
They relate to it.
They
I
relate.
guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is where you'd like to go at this point, is setting
I guess, yeah,
some...
that would be like, now the broader goal would be time management rather than boundary setting,
Okay.
which is, I guess, one aspect
I
of
understand.
time management.
Okay. All right. So if we were to set a goal, some goals around these, do you see them as separate things or as a group of things, that these are 3 things that you'd like as a package to be in your life every week
Actually,
or every day?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I think it relates very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have...
Because it all falls under spending quality time, using my time the best way I can. So I think the boundary setting is an important aspect for that.
Okay. Do you have in mind, or let me go back, tell me how you might frame these as goals then, the cooking, exercise, philosophy podcast?
Something like constructive self-care, maybe.
Constructive self-care, so you would group them together. Okay. And what time of day might you envision these things happening?
It could be any day, any time, but maybe 2 of them could be when I come home,
Okay.
and the other one could be later on in the day.
Okay. Are you comfortable with attaching a time to them, or not a specific time?
I think not a specific time.
Okay.
Just holding them in awareness, and then I know I will follow through. You know, if I'm aware of it, I will follow through.
Okay. If you were to write that down on a piece of paper, on a, let's say, checklist format, what would you write?
Follow through on these things every day, unless, oh yeah, that's how you mean?
Yes, I'm just
Yeah.
asking you to be specific about writing, or about what you might write down for that goal.
So every day before you go to sleep, make sure that these 3 things are done, and preferably before 9 p.m. in the day, so I don't start doing these things at 10:30 when I should be going to sleep. So I would say by 9 p.m. everything should be done.
So by 9 p.m., have cooked a healthy meal, have exercised, and have listened to your philosophy podcast. Okay. Now, does that, if we go through our checklist, does that sound specific enough that you could know what you're doing every day? Okay. And measurable? You know whether you did it or not?
Yeah, I know how many exercises and
Okay. Achievable?
Yeah.
relevant, it's important to you as
Yes.
part of that
Mhm.
self-care and boundary setting,
Yeah.
and you've got a time
Yeah.
before 9 o'clock
Mhm.
at night.
Yeah.
What barriers or things might come up that might prevent you from getting to these things every day?
I think that's where the boundaries come in. And if it's really good to meet a friend, then I'm okay not doing these things one day. I don't need to be too rigid. But if I, if I'm half-hearted, then I'm unhappy that I didn't do these things. So I think boundaries and checking inside about if this is really the way I want to spend my time or not. And being also prioritizing, right? Like being willing to say no to social engagement or cancel social engagement that I've already set up, all of that. Yeah.
Tina, you've mentioned a few times now checking in with yourself on the way that you're using your time. What does that look like?
I think it could even be while I am, let's say, if I'm already with somebody, that could even be just taking a minute to breathe and just be like, is this what I actually want? Hold on, like just inside, and then once I'm not sure, maybe verbalize it rather earlier than later.
That seems to be what worked for you with your roommate. You had that moment of insight where you thought, is this really where I want to be? That seemed to serve you very well in that situation.
Yeah.
Have there been other times, or what other times have you had that insight in the past and it served you well? Somehow I'm blanking out on this That's
one.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about forward then. How can you cue yourself in those moments to ask that question?
I think an important thing to keep in mind is that I don't need a full clarity that I shouldn't be hanging out with this person right now. Just a little hunch is enough. Just a I don't know is kind of enough to say let's reschedule.
It seems to me that you've gained quite a bit of insight from this last experience that going forward might allow you to hear that voice more clearly, more loudly. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I guess what you said about barriers, it's not wanting to disappoint others. Yeah, not wanting them to, I don't know, be disappointed or be feel hurt or in some way block me out because they're like, oh, she doesn't want to hang out, I'm gonna do my own thing. Or like, oh, she's not very social, she's alone, or all these kind of things. The idea of being alone or something like that. The whole package.
Tina, that belief that she's a loner or that concern that somebody will think about that, when you say that out loud, what comes to mind?
It's like a little bit of sadness, I guess.
May I ask, is that, in thinking about that, would you say that's accurate? Being a loner?
That's. I think there have been situations in the past where I would keep to myself, maybe because out of not knowing how to relate. And I think now it's something different. Now it's not really an avoidance of people. It's more like I want to really spend my time well, and being alone is rich. But I think that idea of like something of incompetence that is activated in taking time.
incompetence in the relationship.
In relating to others, I guess.
We're almost at the end of our time here, Tina, and that seems like something that's really important to you. Is that something you might want to carry on with next time we get together?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if I could summarize then where we're going for next week. So we've come to the point where you've created some goals, this self-care package, that you want to make sure that you cook healthy food and exercise and listen to that podcast, a philosophy podcast, most days before 9 o'clock at night. You said the odd day you wouldn't, so you might want to think about whether that's 6 days out of 7, a week, or 5 out of 5. Maybe give that some thought. Then, you wanted to practice those for the next couple of weeks until we meet again 2 weeks from now. And at that point, we'll pick up a discussion that we just started about, what does it show if I create that boundary, and if I suggest to someone that I need some space and time, being comfortable with that to the point where it doesn't feel to you like it's driven by a belief of incompetency or difficult relationships with others. How does that sit with you, Tina?
That sounds good, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you.
It'll tell me when I stop. Here. There's one.